Have you been in a relationship where you felt like this urge to push back, yell, act out of character? You can't quite put your finger on it, but it just feels like you can't breathe in the relationship. If that is at all familiar to you, then chances are you in a relationship that was very controlling. And today, I am going to be talking about the more subtle forms of control that you may have taken as, oh, this is just normal relationship things, but in fact is controlling behavior. So if you grew up or you spent any significant time in an environment where you were hurt or you constantly found yourself around people or your parents or caregivers were always telling you what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and you never felt like you had any freedom to make your own decisions, then most likely you grew up in a controlling household. And I know that at least a lot of people in my world, I can hear people now being like, that's just what it is to grow up, especially like Black household, but it's not just directed towards Black people, right? And we can probably at this point recognize more obvious signs of control, but I want to talk about those things that you may not think are controlling. So, number one, maybe, and let me do a caveat too of all of these things I have done or they have been done to me. In no way am I saying I'm perfect. I figured it out. No, it just blew my mind to think about it in this way. And I'm hoping that it'll help you. So, number one, this urge to outsource responsibility. So, if someone tells you, like, oh, when you speak in that tone, that activates something inside of me and it makes me want to shut down, can you be more mindful of your tone? And while that could be a fair request to make, the subtleness of it is that that person is outsourcing their inner work to you, right? To tell you to be more mindful of your tone means you have to do the extra labor and work to think about, okay, how am I saying the thing? Is this going to offend that person? When you don't have any control over how someone else receives what you're saying and how you're saying it. Now, I am not in no way saying like there are not certain tones and that communication is not also in tone inflections. I am saying though, when it's something as general as, can you watch your tone? That makes me activated or uncomfortable or frustrated or angry or fill in the blank. How is that person supposed to know exactly what tone you are referring to, right? And this is why it's important for us to do our work of saying, what do I need in this moment? To not outsource responsibility to another person, but to ask, what do I need in this moment? Do I need to remove myself from this conversation? Do I need to rethink this whole relationship altogether? Right? Because I often coach clients to say, in your relationships, no matter the relationship, you cannot control the other person. Now, we can do all the things and we can get into manipulation, but is that the type of relationship that you want to have? Can you be in a relationship with this person and accept everything about them, including what you consider to be their flaws, even if those flaws means the way that they speak? In no way am I saying you should stay in no way am I saying you should stay in a relationship with someone who is harmful and abusive and controlling towards you. I am asking you, though, to take responsibility of recognizing patterns with people and how do those patterns interact with you and what you need. We are all responsible for getting what we need. And we can't expect other people to give us what we need. We can expect people to show up and be equal participation in this relationship, but to fully outsource our needs and wants to someone else, no. Right? And so how do we learn to practice better boundaries? How do we say, hey, I notice you're talking that way. I get it. You could talk however you want to. I'm just saying if it continues that I'm going to leave, you don't need to do anything. But I'm just letting you know that I'm being activated. Not that you need to do anything. Not looking for an apology. I'm just asking you to notice, like, this is what's happening. Now, if that person continues to talk in that tone, now you have to honor what you said in terms of the boundary, because the boundary is for you, not for them. And this may seem very confusing because I remember when I was first being introduced to this, I was like, that's confusing. So I'm supposed to put up a boundary even though I can't control the other person? And it's yes, because that's called communication. It's called, hey, hey, friend, hey, hey. So this is what's happening for me in this moment. And if it continues, I'm going to have to excuse myself, right? That's you actively communicating to the other person how you're feeling, how the conversation is impacting you. It's focusing on the behavior itself. It's not focusing on the person by saying the person is bad. It's like this conversation is stirring something up in me. And that is you taking responsibility and ownership of your own emotions and your own reactions. And that's also you taking responsibility for you saying, this is what I'm going to do for me. I'm going to take care of my needs. Like, that's different than saying, hey, watch your tone. Hey, you didn't watch your tone. See, now I'm mad. You made me mad because you didn't watch your tone. Those are two different things. All right, let's go to the next example. Number two is shaming. Now, I could do a whole series on shame. Actually, I think I am going to do a whole series on shame because, y'all, it's real. But this particular type of shame that I'm talking about is when people make those like little jabs at you. When they're like, like, sure, we all just poke little fun at each other. The little jabs I'm saying is, and this is something I used to be really guilty of like, oh, I'm really worried about you. Okay, I know you said you didn't want to talk about it, but I'm just sharing my concern. Oh, okay. Now I know you said you didn't want to talk about it, but you've been moping, right? And while the tone suggests I'm being concerned, just because I say it in a soft, sing-song voice, right? It says like, oh, I'm concerned. Like this is coming from a genuine place. But really it's passive aggression. And really it's a way to control, right? Because I'm not respecting the other person's boundary when they said they did not want to talk about it. And because I feel like I know best, then I'm going to try to be manipulative and say, oh, I'm just worried. Oh, I just want you to know I'm here if you can talk, if you want to talk. Now, me saying that once, right? Like maybe we had a conversation on Tuesday and you said you didn't want to talk about it. And then I check in with you on Wednesday to say, hey, I just want to check in to see if you want to talk, right? That's different. And that person still says no, then I let it go. That's different than Tuesday, you said you didn't want to talk. Wednesday, I'm like, okay, you want to talk again? You say no. And then Thursday, I'm like, okay, I gave you 2 days. Can we talk about it? Friday, okay, but for real, like I'm just worried. Right now, we're getting into controlling behavior. And what I had a hard time with, I'm like, okay, but if I'm in a relationship with someone and there's obviously a problem and we're obviously not addressing the problem, what am I supposed to do? Just sit there and take it? And this goes back to boundaries. No, you don't have to. You get to remove yourself from the situation. You get to distance yourself from, you can say, hey, I understand you're going through a lot right now. I understand that you need some time to process. It's a little bit difficult for me to be in a space and knowing that's going on. I want to be here for you. I want to be able to talk when you're ready. But right now, I'm just going to remove myself until you are, right? You could do that. And I used to say, but then that means I used to feel like that meant I was being doubly punished because I was punished that the person shut down and I was punished that I had to remove myself because, right, this goes to my work of I didn't want to be alone. And I was like, what a quiet person is better than no person. Right. But this is why this work is so important because me operating from this fear of abandonment, fear of being alone, makes me get into controlling behaviors of like, are you sure? I just want to check in. Let's talk about it. Even though that person clearly said they didn't want to talk about it. And there are good reasons probably why they didn't want to talk about it. And instead of respecting that, I push, right? And a lot of times that ended up in a huge argument because I pushed them to talk when they said they were not ready to talk. Instead, if I would have taken some time, like, okay, what is it that I need, right? I don't want to be with a person who clearly has an issue, right? This is one level, right? Because I hear y'all. One level could be like, I don't want to be in a space with a person who clearly has an issue and they're not talking about it. That's an option. An option could be, okay, what is it really that is bothering me? Oh, I think that this person is mad at me. I think they have a problem with me and I don't like uncertainty and I don't want it to come out the blue. But all of that is on me, right? All of that are my thoughts, my assumptions about what's going on with that person. Because that person just said they didn't want to talk. And I'm just thinking like if somebody came out the blue, there was no argument or anything, an event that prompted this, they were just having a hard time and they didn't want to talk, right? But you sensed it. That's the example I'm going off of, right? But instead of making that about me, their silence, their brooding, their preoccupation, instead of making that about me, I could just be like, no, they just clearly are having a hard time. And taking what they say at face value or what they didn't say, right? Because in this scenario, that other person didn't say they didn't want to be around me. That person didn't say that they had a problem with me. They're still around me. I'm the one making it a problem by constantly trying to poke at them and say, hey, what's going on? Tell me. I need to know because I need to know. You have to tell me now. That's controlling. Okay? And you might be like, but I'm just trying to regulate my system. But you have to regulate your system. You can't force another person to tell you what they don't want to tell you in order for you to be okay. That's codependency. Okay. So that's number 2. Number 3 is avoiding plans and schedules. Like canceling at the last minute, saying things like, oh, I don't like restrictions. Just like my freedom. But every time somebody wants to do something with you, you can't figure out when you're free, or you say, oh, yeah, I could do it with you on Friday. And then Friday comes, you're like, oh, I forgot about all these things that are going on. This is going to be a hard one for some of y'all, especially my neurodivergent friends, because it's still a hard one for me. Okay. Yes, multiple things can be true at once. I'm gonna say it again, multiple things can be true at once. Yes, you can have some brain things that makes it hard for you to follow through, execute, be organized, right? But you also, and that definitely, right, ADHD, maybe it's autism, something there, but there's a huge link, connection to that, to trauma, to past trauma. People with complex PTSD, which I'll talk about in another video, this is a huge symptom. It's like this, I'm afraid to get close to people, and I'm so caught up in my own stuff that it doesn't help me to see clearly when it comes down to scheduling or following through or executing. They work one and the same, but the reason why it's a form of control is because you're controlling other people's time and energy, right? Because you're not following through, but you told them you're going to meet with them on Friday at 12, and Friday at 12 comes, and then you say, oh, I can't do it. That person took that time out, blocked that on their calendar, maybe said no to other things and people because they were holding it for you. Another way like this shows up that I like do, like responding to messages. Again, it's not intentionally like you're trying to control the person. Doesn't change that the impact does lead to you controlling someone else because that person doesn't want to spend time with you, or they want to follow through on whatever that commitment was at Friday at 12. But if you don't follow through, then it's like, what happened? And people can be understanding. This is a little bit tricky, right? Because I know it's a delicate dance, and it's our responsibility again to do our work to be like, okay, how can I be aware of this? How can I accept that? Yeah, this is what I do from time to time, and so how can I not only communicate clearly upfront with that person when I say, okay, I'm going to be making these plans. I need to go double check, right? How do you have a system? And if you don't have the capacity to have a system, right? Like, how can you get yourself some help? Like, it's not your fault about what happened to you or how your brain functions, but it is your responsibility to find ways to navigate around that, especially if you want to interact with other people. And I know it's going to be a hard pill to swallow. It is the truth, though, or that's going to end up like loneliness, isolation, and that's not the best solution either. So that's number 3. Number 4, it goes along with plans and schedules and time. It's like you demand people to show up on time. You demand people to be like, you need to do it, or this is a good example. It's like, I'm supposed to accept that the way your brain works may make you forgetful to return messages or show up when you said you would or do the things you said you would do. Like, I'm supposed to be okay with that. But if I show up late or if I don't do something on time, now you're frustrated with me. Now you're saying I don't respect you. It's like, it's okay for you to do it. And you can say, oh, it's because I got blah, blah, blah diagnosis. But if I was to do it, the same level of understanding and patience is not returned, right? Because you might be saying, well, I have XYZ diagnosis and I made all this effort to be here on time and you couldn't even show up on time. Is that fair? Yeah, all of this gonna go back to like boundaries, right? Because while we can hold space that people do have different ways that their brains function and do have different values on time and organizations and whatnot, that doesn't mean that we don't get to take care of our own needs. That doesn't mean that I don't get to put a boundary up and say, hey, I understand this about you, but we're gonna make this plan at Friday at 12, and that by 12:15 if I don't see you or I don't hear from you, I'm leaving, right? I understand that I was late. I take full responsibility. Next time, I'll make sure I communicate with you ahead of time, right? Like it's for you. Its boundaries are how are you regulating your own emotions? How are you getting what you need? What are the rules you have for yourself? So I have two more. So the next one is when you control people or other people try to control you with their moods, like they had a bad day. Perfect example. I used to be in a relationship with someone and they used to really be into bowling and they could have been professional. That's how seriously they took it. And if they had a bad night bowling, like they didn't get as many points as they wanted to, they would not talk. And we would be in a car for a good 30, 45 minutes on the way back home, and they just would shut down. They wouldn't talk. I couldn't talk to them. No music would play. And they would, anytime I would say something, they're like, no, you know how it is. I had a bad day. And because they had a bad day, I had to have a bad day. Right, that's controlling. It's like, yeah, I can hold space that you're not in the mood and you're a little bit sad about your game, but I'm also a person and that's not me. And your feelings, like this is how we maintain boundaries, lines. Just because you had a bad day doesn't mean I have to feel sad. I can empathize with you, but it doesn't mean like you have to like I could have been having a beautiful day. I could have had a great conversation and was still thinking about that. Where is the space for that for me? Right. And so how if I could go back to that version of me, I would say, you get to have your own emotions. You don't have to do this. Right. You get to say, well, I just won't leave with you. Whenever you have a bad night, I just won't be with you. I get to say that too, right? That version of me would have been like, but then he's going to be sad. But I would tell her, he got to choose a struggle. Does he want to be upset about this game? Or does he want to hang out with you? Like, right? It's not about trying to control him. Like, it's like you go have your feelings. Go ahead, go home, do what you need to do. I'm gonna go over here and do what I need to do. That's perfectly reasonable and okay. But to say I have to be in the car while you're sad and not talking to me and still be around you just because you want me to be around you, no. And then the last one is like controlling with expectations. We all have manuals for the people in our lives for how we think relationships should be and how we think people should be. And when they fail to live up to that manual, like that instruction manual that we have for them, then we're disappointed and we're angry and we want to punish them. So, right now, the time I'm recording this is Valentine's Day. And let's say you have this expectation that your partner thinks about Valentine's Day and has planned this like Hallmark movie event surprise for you. And then you come home from work and there's nothing. There's not a card, no flowers. It's not even a piece of chocolate on the table. Now you're angry and raging and being like, I'm going to leave you. Is that fair? Did you clearly communicate what you expected? If not, how is that person supposed to know this is what you expected? And even if you did clearly communicate it, did they agree to it? Did they say they were going to do it? Or did you just expect them to do it because you said they should do it? Right? Control. This is this is a great conversation. I just want to come on really quickly just to tell you about these forms of control, but I want to dive deeper into them because I know some of y'all are like, say what now, girl? Yes, we all participate to some extent in controlling behaviors. It is what we've been taught, it's what we see modeled to us in the world, on social media, on TV. So it makes sense. Our work is to constantly examine our behaviors and ask ourselves, do our behaviors align with who we say we are and who we say we want to be? Do we want to be someone who uses control, no matter if it's subtle or not, to get what we want to interact in our relationships? I would love to know which form of control you engage in the most that you didn't know. Any ahas from this? Let me know down below. I'll talk to you next time.